Welcome, everybody, to the October episode of The S Word, a podcast about suicide prevention. My name is Sarah Kolbeck. I'm an assistant professor of psychiatry and behavioral medicine at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and I direct our division of suicide research and healing. And I'm back with my buddy, Andrew.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
I love that. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Schramm. I'm a clinical psychologist and an assistant professor in the Division of Trauma and Acute Care Surgery in the Department of Surgery at the Medical College of Wisconsin. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in today. We're really excited for this episode, which is featuring author Charlotte Maya talking about her new book, Sushi Tuesdays, a memoir of love, loss, and family resilience. Before we get started with our conversation today with Charlotte, I just want to remind our listeners that we'll be talking about topics related to suicide today. And so if that feels like a tender subject for you, as you're listening, feel free to hit pause and come back later. We will be here when you are ready to listen. And after you've wrapped up listening to today's episode, please remember to take some time to do something nice for yourself. I also want to remind our listeners that there are resources available if you are ever concerned about yourself or a loved one. We have the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which is available by calling or texting 988. I have just learned that there is also Spanish-speaking services available on 988, which is really exciting.
It's great.
Yeah. And also, if you are a veteran, you can press 1 when dialing 988 and be connected with someone that can help you specifically. And I've heard that they are working on developing 988 resources in other languages as well, which is great. So this is an expanding resource nationally. You can also reach the crisis text line. Again, that's available 24/7. You can text the word talk to 741-741, and a crisis counselor will text you back and be able to help you. You don't have to be in crisis to use any of these resources. If you just need somebody to chat with and talk to about whatever you're going through, those are great places to start. So encourage you to use those. Yeah, go for it.
Now that 988 is a thing and has text capability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the 741-741, is that different from texting 988?
It is. They're two different things. Yeah. So the 741-741 is only texting. It always has only been texting. It's a different group of folks that are responding to the calls.
Okay.
988 is, I know here in Wisconsin, 988 is administered through Family Services out of Brown County. And so that is a local service, unless they're at capacity, and then that gets kicked to the national service. But yeah, they are actually different. And you can text both of them if you'd like to get help. So yeah, some good resources out there for sure. So as I mentioned, our guest for today is Charlotte Maya. Charlotte is an author. As I mentioned, the book Sushi Tuesdays, which I have here right next to me on my desk. It's called Sushi Tuesdays, a memoir of love, loss, and family resilience. And we're so excited to talk to you today, Charlotte. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah,
Thank
welcome.
you so much for inviting me. Thank you. It's my honor to be here with you today.
That's great. So I just wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about you, Charlotte. So you are somebody that I was introduced to through somebody here at the Medical College of Wisconsin who saw your book and was aware of this podcast and the work that we do and thought maybe Charlotte would be a good podcast guest. So I reached out to you, kind of cold called you, cold emailed you, and invited you to just have a conversation and talk about you and your background and your story. So you are a loss survivor, and you wrote the book Sushi Tuesdays after this loss. And I guess the first question I want to ask you is, what inspired you to write a book about your experience?
I feel like suicide is a story that was demanding to be told. It's the 10th leading cause of death in this country, as you guys know, and we don't like to talk about it, but talking about it is what makes a difference. And I felt like this was a story that just wouldn't let me go. When the police came to my house to let me know that my husband Sam had died by suicide, they told me, "We will tell the children who were 6 and 8 at the time, we will tell the children that their father died, but you have to tell them how. And we
Wow.
recommend that you tell them the truth because you do not want them to find out from somebody else. And on a day when nothing made sense, that advice, that invitation to be totally transparent actually made sense to me.
Hmm.
And that level of transparency has really sort of guided my journey forward. And I was terrified that I would be ostracized because of how my husband had died. But what I actually found was the opposite. What I found was community. And the more I just was just very honest and transparent about what this journey looked like, it was so confusing. I had no idea that Sam was struggling so much. He wasn't diagnosed or medicated and
Mhm.
um, wasn't seeing a therapist. So I was so shocked and confused and angry and grief stricken. I had just so many feelings that I couldn't help but sort of spill out. And I was surprised at how many people wanted to have this conversation and how difficult it is to have the conversation until you get started. And then, like, I don't know anybody whose life hasn't been impacted by suicide. And we can have these conversations in ways that are honest and hopeful and healing. And so as I continued on my journey, people kept saying, you have to write the book, you have to write the book, you have to write the book. And eventually I did. Took me 10 years.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I'm so glad you wrote it. It's at the top of my list of books that I want to read, Charlotte. I'm curious, kind of zooming out a bit, can you tell us, uh, to the degree you're comfortable, like tell us a little bit about yourself and like your family, like what is the context of this loss?
Yeah, well, before Sam's death, I would have said that we were a pretty unremarkable family of four. Sam and I had been married for 15 years. We'd been together for 17 years. Our kids were 6 and 8, and um, we met in law school. Neither one of us was practicing anymore. I this is not the advocacy work I ever envisioned doing. And
Mm,
so that has sort of been one of those curveballs that life throws. And obviously now I'm really passionate about suicide awareness and prevention, and also a word I learned from you, Sarah, postvention, um,
Yeah.
because we may not solve all the suicides, but we can do a lot better than we're doing now. And we might not be able to solve everything, but we can certainly solve the isolation. There's just
Yeah.
so much shame and stigma surrounding suicide, so much I didn't know. And I feel like people, all of us, if we all, not just clinicians, not just healthcare providers, if we all develop a certain level of fluency in suicide, we will save lives because our family members, our friends, we are the first line of defense for each other. It was, for example, really helpful for me to understand that asking somebody if they are considering suicide, if they are having thoughts of hurting themselves, doesn't plant that idea in
Mhm.
their head. It's such helpful, practical information to have, to know that you can ask those questions. And instead of that being a risk to somebody, which is, I think, what people are afraid of, you're actually demonstrating that you're a safe person to have that conversation with.
Mhm.
So I realize I kind of veered off from the question that you asked,
it's okay.
um, because I didn't know anything about suicide. I never would have expected Sam. This is one of those refrains I guess you hear about people. Oh, I wouldn't have expected fill in the blank, whoever seemed to have a beautiful life, seemed to have a healthy marriage or partnership or relationship with kids. And so I think it's important for us to understand that suicide is a disease that could impact any one of us. And so I was, before Sam died, it never occurred to me that he might be suffering so much that he would consider ending his own life. It never entered my mind. There were things I could see in retrospect that now I understand
Mhm.
were signs of suicidal ideation. And that's the kind of fluency I think. I mean, we know about nutrition. We understand a lot of the signs for cardiac health and
Yep.
diabetes. And we didn't used to say the C word, cancer. And now we have research dollars and we're making so
Love
much
that. Love.
progress. And I feel like the S word is getting there, but not
Mhm.
there yet. And so I think I just really wanted to be part of that advocacy work, part of that healing work,
Yeah.
and to honor Sam, because I think that one of the risks of shame and stigma is that it reduces our loved one to those last moments of their life, and that's not true, and it's not fair.
Yeah.
Mm. I'd love to hear more about that. But Sarah, I know you have a question that's burning inside you. I can see
No,
it.
it's okay. No, so you had mentioned, this is not the advocacy work that you ever wanted to be doing. And you mentioned the community that you have found. The loss survivors that I talked to, I know several loss survivors closely in my life. And in some cases, I've heard them say things like, I wish I hadn't ever met these friends. I wish I didn't ever have to do this work, but they're doing the work and they're finding meaning and connection through that community. And I think, Charlotte, you and I talked about Kevin's song. Was that part of the conversation that
Yes.
we had? So we
Mhm.
had Gail Urso on a few episodes ago talking about the work of Kevin's song. And it just amazes me how supportive and connected the community of lost survivors is. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of what you found in that community and how that has helped you sort of um, not necessarily make meaning of the loss, but maybe has helped you navigate that loss.
I think it's so important to know we're not alone.
Hmm.
And even though every loss is individual, every grief is individual, my loss is different than my children's loss. And their loss is different from each other because we have those unique relationships. But there's something about being in community that just makes such a difference.
Yeah.
I've just met some beautiful, brokenhearted people. I think there's also something about when you suffer a loss like this, you become pretty clear on what's important to you, and there's not a
Mhm.
lot of time for garbage, and just things get real really quickly,
Yeah.
and not in like a heavy doom and gloom sort of way, just in a really honest human to human sort of way. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to, that it really touches our humanity. We joke in
Mm.
our house that, we don't keep the skeletons in the closets. We put them out on the piano and on the walls and in the hallway
Mm.
because they are how we got here. Because grief doesn't end. Something I often say, love remembers, but love does remember. And so we continue to say Sam's name. And I spoiler alert, I did meet somebody special and fall in love
Yep.
again. And
Yes.
my now husband had also been widowed. His wife had colon cancer at 41,
Mhm.
and he also had two kids. So, um, you know, Sam and Debbie, we talk about them. They're very alive and well in our family conversations. They are how we got here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that perspective for sure. And just, I think one of the things that struck me as I was reading is how honest, and you mentioned, the how transparent you wanted to be in the book, and that was one thing that I noticed right away is how honest your writing was, and how kind of vulnerable you were willing to be. And I wonder if, it sounds like the folks that were rallying around you wanted you to sort of tell your story and talk about what happened. And I wonder if that support kind of helped you in that willingness to be transparent and share.
Absolutely. Absolutely it did.
Authenticity comes to mind in
Yeah.
addition to vulnerability.
Yeah, I think there's so many of these suicide losses in particular that have been tucked away in photo albums and at the back of the closet and in the family history.
Mhm.
It's incredible and awful to me at the same time how many people have held these suicide losses for so long by themselves.
Mhm.
And it is heartening to me when we find each other and can share our stories together. I hope that one of the things that Sushi Tuesdays does is it invites other people to share their suicide stories because it's too important not to share.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask you, so I know the answer to this, but if you could explain to the listeners how you came up with the title Sushi Tuesdays and where that came from, because when I first looked at it, I was like, huh, that's interesting. And so
Yeah.
I'm really curious if you could tell us the story behind that.
Yes, definitely. Very early on in my process, I had a favorite yoga class on Tuesday mornings, and my therapist had a recurring slot open up on Tuesdays. So Tuesdays very quickly became my day just for me. I went to yoga, I went to therapy. I didn't go to coffee. I didn't make appointments with, as I say, MDs or JDs or BFDs. That was just my day for me and my healing.
PFTs, I love that.
I called it my Charlotte Shabbat because it
Yeah.
was really a sacred day. Did I need to crawl back into bed and cry? Because that's real. I would do that. Did I want to go for a walk? Sometimes I'd take myself out to sushi, party of one. The kids were 6 and 8, so they didn't care about sushi. But what did I need for my own healing? Because as a single parent, I knew I had to take care of myself in order to take care of my kids. And about a year and a half after Sam died, I was speaking at a children's grief conference. I was exhibit A, basically. And
Mm.
there's a chaplain in the presentation with me. And afterwards, she said, Charlotte, when you write your book, I loved how like presumptive she was. Charlotte, when you write your book, you should call it Sushi Tuesdays. And so I had this title in my mind, Sushi Tuesdays, and exactly as it is on the book, Sushi and Tuesdays underneath. And as I was getting closer to writing, I started a blog because writing a book seemed too sort of overwhelming.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so I started a blog, and in URL form, Sushi Tuesdays, there's one of what we call Uncle Jose's colorful words right in the middle of the Sushi Tuesdays. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's the mess.
SHIT?
Yes. I don't know if
Okay.
we're allowed to say that out loud on your
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. I think so.
So
Yeah.
you can edit it out later if you have to, but
There
there's
you
shit
go.
in the middle of Sushi Tuesdays. And
Um,
I would have edited it out if I had seen it in advance, but I actually once I realized it was there and it was
yeah.
already published, I thought it was poetic because
Mhm.
Sushi Tuesdays was about dealing with the mess in the middle, because grief is hard and loud and messy and painful. And so I I kept it. So Sushi Tuesdays was really about my day for my own healing, but also about really dealing with the messy reality of what it looks like to live a grief and what it is to parent during grief and what it is for young children to try to navigate this impossible loss.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really love what that symbolizes. And again, it's such a catchy, it's such a catchy, like different title. It makes you, it like draws you in, it makes you want to understand what's happening. And
You don't
so
even have to like sushi. It's okay.
I I don't like sushi, but I do like Sushi Tuesdays. So that's perfect.
Charlotte, you mentioned like the grief process being different for kids, and I'm curious just to hear about like what that looked like for your kids, and maybe like in particular, were there aspects of their grieving process that felt counterintuitive to you or different from yours?
Yeah. Yeah. We broke a lot of things. And very quickly as a mother, I would go through my little checklist about, okay, can it be replaced? Does it matter? Is he hurting himself or his brother? And one of the things we did was say Uncle Jose's colorful words out loud because sometimes we need little words for big feelings. And I
Yeah.
said, you can use those words at home for big feelings. That is totally fine with me. I told my kids what the F word was, what it meant, but that I couldn't save them from the principal if they used it at school. So you can use it at home. You can't
Encouraging
bash
that
your,
expression though, or that expression of emotion.
yeah.
Mhm.
Being able to hold that. And so, for example, somebody very well intended but wholly misguided told my 8-year-old, you are the man of the house.
Oh,
And
yikes. Yeah.
it doesn't come out with kids, it doesn't come out as, oh, hey mom, somebody told me I'm the man of the house. So um you
Mhm.
know it doesn't come out that way. It came out at bedtime usually. Mommy, what's a mortgage?
Mm,
Mommy, how do you pay the electric bill? And all of a sudden I put the book down and I said, well, what are you thinking about? And
mm,
that's when it comes out.
mhm.
Mr. Who's What's It said that I'm the man of the house now. It's
Yeah.
my job to take care of you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Said, sweetheart, you're not the man of the house. You're the 8-year-old of the house. And your job is play dates and third grade and baseball and, brush your teeth. Like
Yeah.
this is what the 8-year-old is supposed to do.
Mhm.
That stuck though. And I think it's not uncommon for the firstborn child, whether it's a boy or girl, to feel a lot of pressure to take care of the surviving parent, whether the surviving parent is a mother or a father. Um,
Mhm.
and so this is not an uncommon thing from what I learned for the firstborn child to carry. That is really heavy for an 8-year-old to
Yeah.
Incredible.
carry, being the man of the house. Like, what does that even mean? So that was something, for example, that we navigated, and not just once, right? We would have this conversation multiple times. um the 8-year-old said something along the lines of, I need you to get married again, mom, because I need a stepdad because I'm too little to be the
Mhm.
man of the house.
Mhm.
And at the time it was like, for me, I didn't really realize I was single, even though being widowed is by definition being single. I was still wearing my wedding ring. I didn't think of myself as, it didn't really occur to me that I had been loved well and I had been married happily. It was too short. I
Yeah.
was
Mhm.
grateful, but I felt like I I had been loved, and I knew that Sam loved me, even though I also felt abandoned and angry and all of those
Yeah.
things. But
Mhm.
so the older son says, I need you to get married again. Meanwhile, the younger one says, Mommy, if you get married again, I'm going to kill that guy, and then I'm going to kill his ghost, and then I'm going to kill his ghost's ghost, because nobody will ever be as good as daddy.
Yeah.
So there's sort of that truism that if you have more than one child, they will have at least that many opinions. And so navigating both of those ideas, and sometimes, the thoughts just, they come from I don't know where, but I remember holding them and saying, I don't know what's going to happen,
Mhm.
but I do know this: there's a daddy shaped space in your heart that will be there forever. Nobody else is going to take over that spot because nobody else fits. That is daddy's spot, and daddy will always be in your heart. But the thing about love
Mhm.
is that it grows. And if somebody special does come into our life, your heart will grow and there will be a new space for him. It doesn't take over the daddy space, it's its
Yeah.
own thing.
Yeah.
And we ultimately did live our way into that truism, but I could never have imagined it really at the time. I was just trying to figure out how to help both kids hear what they needed to hear, right? That they are safe, that they are loved, that I can take care of them. Naturally, when I did meet Tim, my now husband, they flip-flopped in their opinions
Yeah.
about what I should do. By then, Danny said, Mom, I don't think you should get married. I liked him. He's a nice guy and everything, but I don't really think we need to go there. I don't want to change rooms or houses or anything. And I remember asking Danny, I said, what did, you know, right after Daddy died, you wanted me to get married again. I wonder what has changed for you.
Yeah.
And Danny said, Mommy, I didn't know you could take care of us. And now I know you.
Um, oh,
Wow.
so a lot of growth.
And fluidity is part of what I hear.
Totally. And you know, children revisit grief at each developmental stage. So the 6-year-old thought daddy walked on water. That 16-year-old was very angry
Mhm.
because now he's taller than his father was. He's starting to develop a sense of what it means to be a man, what it means to live up to your commitments. And so so the 16-year-old then has to re-grieve. What does that mean? And it's never going to end, right?
Mm.
When they become 41 and they're as old as their father was, they're going to think about this again. When they're
Mhm.
42 and they're older than their father ever got to be, it comes up again. When they look into the eyes of their own 6 or 8-year-olds, I think they're going to understand suicide as a disease in a way they've never understood before.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
I keep thinking about how fortunate your kids are to have you as their mama. I really am like, I really am feeling that. And I wanted to vocalize that because it just seems like you were just so wonderfully supportive and understanding and knew to take care of yourself. And it just, yeah, I just wanted to say that because
Thank
it's
you.
what I've been thinking about for the last few minutes. And yeah, yeah, that really strikes me. And I want to ask, so you mentioned with your 8-year-old that the comment about, you're the man of the house now. As somebody that has experienced a suicide loss, what are some things that you found that people said to you or did for you, both, kind of immediately after Sam passed and then, in the time, um, in the years since, what have been some of the helpful things that people have done where you've really felt cared for and supported?
Yeah, I had a lot of support. I was very, very lucky to be in a relatively small community, and I had graduated from high school here. And so I knew a lot of people. And so I was incredibly well supported. Um, I actually, before I go there, I feel like I should say the kids still, I'm sure that there are things they think that I did wrong. And I just want to put that
Mm,
out there because
yeah.
there's no way to be a perfect
Mhm.
parent. I did the
Oh,
best I
no.
could with what I had.
Yeah.
And the one of the hardest things about this journey is sort of handing the kids the reins to their own healing journey at
Mm,
some point because they have to I did the best I could to support them on their way, and then
yeah.
they are on their own journeys.
Mhm.
Um, but in addition to casseroles and grocery shopping and
Yeah.
walking the dog and all those kinds of things, I had a friend who she was a really good seamstress, and one
Mm,
of the kids had shredded a favorite blanket in a fit of grief, and she sewed that back together with a new backing. It's not the same, but there's something beautiful about having that repaired blanket. Another
well,
friend who was gifted with sewing machines took some of Sam's shirts and made
mm,
teddy bears out of them, which was
oh,
absolutely darling. One of So I had so many people that kind of came out of the woodwork to help me that in the book I called them the Janes.
yep.
And so the Janes are sort of this Greek chorus of people who showed up in different ways, and one of everybody's favorite Janes is who I called Engineer Jane. And she came to me one day and she said, "Charlotte, I can't cook and I have no social skills, but I have noticed that you are late to school every day."
Uh-huh.
And she said, "I'm wondering if it would help you if my 2 kids and I walked to school with you and your 2 kids." And
Wow.
so she showed up on my doorstep every day at 7:45 with her 2 kids in tow, and she'd knock on the door, and the kids were, as soon as they heard Engineer Jane knocking at the door, socks, shoes, homework, lunches, go, go, go. Um, and I didn't need 12 engineers on my doorstep. I just needed one. And so I was really humbled by how many different ways people can show up. And so I feel like everyone has their own sort of quality of light. And you might not even realize that it's a gift. If you're a book lover, for example, maybe pick a book out that you think somebody might like, or a soundtrack, put together a Spotify playlist. I mean, there's just it can be simple. It doesn't have to be expensive or time consuming, but there are all kinds of ways you can show up for people, because I really do think that we each have our own quality of light that we shine in each other's lives. And when you have had a significant loss, you need all the light you can get from whoever you can get it from. And
Mhm.
so what I often say to people who have suffered a loss is, if someone says, "Can I help you?" just say yes.
Yeah.
Let them figure out how. Just say, "Yes, I need the help." So whether it's walking you to school, or putting together the meal train, or mending clothes, or whatever it is, um, whatever your gift is, we need it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that phrase, quality of light. I've never heard that before.
same.
Yeah, and I think that's such a cool way of talking about, somebody's, like, talents or their gifts that they have to give to other people. It's such a cool such a cool phrase, and, something I hear from loss survivors is folks not really knowing how to deal with their loss and not wanting to say the wrong thing, and as a result of that, sometimes pulling back in a way that is not helpful, but it sounds like you were really supported in a lot of really beautiful ways.
I mean, sometimes people say things too that's really not helpful.
Yeah.
There's no, I wish there was like one right thing to say. There's
Mhm.
not. And personally, I preferred it if somebody showed up and attempted to say something, even if it was glitchy and maybe rubbed me the wrong way, but they're trying. That was better for
Yeah.
me than
Okay.
somebody who didn't want to risk saying the wrong thing and pulled back. That felt harder.
Mhm. Yeah. So just reach out. Is it sounds like the message is just, give it a shot. If you even if you don't know exactly the perfect words or exactly the perfect thing, it's helpful to know that you're being thought of and cared for in that way.
Or sometimes just show up and don't say anything.
Yeah. Mm,
Just
yeah.
show up. And then, like my friend who engineer Jane, who noticed that we were late to school, when you show up, maybe you notice
Mhm.
what the dog hasn't been walked in days, or something. You
Yeah.
notice something. I had a friend who, I remember telling her that every time I walked into my closet, I would see Sam's clothes and I just fell apart, and I, like, time would pass, and I would just be weeping in the closet, and then I would forget kind of where I was. And she came over one afternoon with another friend, and she said, "Okay, I'm not going to get rid of anything." But she took all of Sam's clothes, she organized it, labeled it, put it all in boxes in the garage, and said, "It'll all be there when you're ready for it." And then she organized all of my clothes, so there wasn't some big gaping hole in the closet where Sam's stuff
Mm.
used to be. I mean, it was like walking into a magazine closet. It didn't stay that way, of course, but like this, that was her gift. That was something she was really good at. And again, I didn't need 10 people in my closet, but one was amazing.
Mm, I love that. Charlotte, you had mentioned that you saw a therapist,
Mm.
and this question feels a little bit selfish in the sense that I would just love to get your perspective on what was helpful, what wasn't helpful in that work. That myself as a therapist and someone that trains, future psychologists and future therapists, I'm always just really eager to hear any aspects of that experience that you'd like to share.
Well, I am a big fan of therapy,
Mm,
because I think it really makes a difference in the healing journey. And there was a time when we had, his, hers, ours, and ours therapists. And then when Tim and I got engaged, we added a few more his and another ours. Um, there's something really sacred about being heard, about being able to say whatever. It was important to me that the children feel that they had a truly safe space. So I never even asked their therapist how to
that's
go,
great.
what's going
Yeah.
on, what should I do. Um, it's hard as a parent. I mean, believe me, I wanted to know what they were talking about, what they were worried about, what was going on for them, how I could support them. But and if I was worried about something, I might send an email to the kids therapist and say, this is what something I'm worried about. And they just go, okay. And I like, it's just into this black hole.
Putting that out there, yeah.
Totally. It's parenting is not for the faint of heart, but for me, being seen, being held in that space, it's profoundly human to be in that space, being listened to. I mean, it really is. If I hadn't been, well, I feel like I've been in therapy for so long now, but on and off, but there's just something really elemental about being able to share your heart with another human, what you're really afraid of, and say the thing you're afraid to say,
Mhm.
and let it sort of echo around the room. And often that's where it loses its power, is when it's in the room. I don't
Mhm.
know if that answers your question.
It does, and so having space really to connect on a almost a human existential level, and space to share these thoughts in a way that feels safe, that
Mhm.
maybe there's not space for in other relationships.
I think that's one of the values of just having that 988 number, like, just the fact that it's there, even if you're not calling it, knowing that it's there, that is a need that is met for people, I think is I just think it's so powerful, because we're not meant to do this alone. Life
Mhm,
is a team sport. We need each other.
mhm.
And I think it just being that vulnerable is sometimes counterintuitive, I think, in our, particularly maybe in our culture. And maybe
Yeah.
especially there's a gendered component to that vulnerability.
Mhm.
Um, but it just, I don't know. I just think it helps us find what's most important.
Yeah. Yeah. Therapy is so powerful. It can be so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think, for the reasons that and I loved how you said when you say something and it kind of hangs in the room, it loses a little bit of its power. And I personally, in my own mental health journey, have found that when I'm able to just say the thing or the things that are bugging me and just get it out there, how much better I feel after and how I feel like it doesn't have power anymore.
Mhm.
Or maybe it has less power than it did
Maybe,
before.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe less power, yeah. But it can be such a powerful experience. Yeah. So we're coming to almost the top of the hour, which is wild to me because I've really enjoyed this conversation. And
It's flowing, yeah.
yeah, and I've been wanting to talk to you about the book and about your experience for such a long time. But I want to finish off, if it's okay, on a question that we ask all of our guests, regardless of what walk of life they are from or their background. And that is, what is one thing that you wish or want people to know about suicide?
I think I really want people to know that there's hope, that it is an illness, but um, there is hope, and not to stay alone in this space.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's a great message, and I think a really great way to wrap up today's episode on that note of hope. And I also want to make sure that folks that are interested know where to find your book, Sushi Tuesdays. Where can they find that?
They can find it in wherever books are sold. I often recommend that people buy from their local independent bookstore, and so
Uh-huh.
they may have to special order it if they don't already carry it. But you can also order it online, all the major venues. And I actually recently recorded the audio version of Sushi Tuesdays, which was a
Mhm,
very fun project. And
Ah,
I think there's something particular about memoir um, that lends itself to being narrated by
mhm,
the author. There's some
yeah.
incredible narrators out there, professional narrators, but I think for memoir, there's something special about hearing hearing the story in the author's own voice. So that's also available for download on Audible.
Well, I'm
On
gonna have to
Audible.
listen to it now too.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
yeah,
It's really
I
cool.
yeah, I do a lot of driving and I love to listen to memoirs when I drive. It's like my favorite genre
Oh,
because I get really engrossed and then I'm like not worried about like veering off the road or falling asleep. So I'm gonna have to download as soon as I get my credit next month.
wonderful. Well, it's almost the first of the month, so maybe soon.
Yes,
One of my
yes.
friends who was listening to it after he finished listening to the book, he said, "Oh my gosh, I felt like you were on my commute with me every day, and now you're
Oh,
not there
sweet.
anymore." I mean, it was just
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, so I hope you enjoy it.
Wonderful. Yeah. So folks, look for Sushi Tuesdays wherever you buy your books or wherever you download your books. That is amazing. So yeah, definitely.
I'm so glad we connected. Thank you so
Me
much,
too.
Dr. Sarah and Dr. Andrew.
Of course.
Really grateful for the work that you do in the
Yeah,
world.
Thank you,
thank you.
Charlotte. Yeah, I feel the same way toward you. As we wrap up, I just want to kind of check in. Is there anything we haven't talked about that kind of is on your heart or that you had in mind today? And like I said, if not, that's totally okay. Just to me in these conversations, it feels good to have a second to kind of take inventory and see like, do I feel like I've shared or expressed like what I've wanted to? So I like just to make space for that.
Thank you for asking. I feel like I'm the kind of person who's going to think exactly of what I should have said right after we hit the red button
Totally.
that says leave.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Um, well, I'm not thinking of anything, but if I do, I'll email it to you and you can add it to the show notes.
Yeah,
That's
please
awesome.
do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I'm so glad we connected and really appreciate your time today with us
Yeah,
telling
thank you
your
both.
story. Yeah.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, just a reminder to take care of yourself as you are going about your day today. Do something nice for yourself. Again, those resources are available. Call or text 988. You can also text the crisis line at 741-741. Text the word talk. I say that so much that I lost my cadence there for a second. Text the word talk to 741-741. And we hope you join us for our next episode. Andrew, I was thinking about this. We
Yeah.
have never had an episode where you and I have talked about our work. And so I was
Wow.
thinking for a future episode, maybe we could interview each other about what we do because we actually do
Oh,
some pretty cool research too.
yeah.
So yeah,
Charlotte's giving
maybe.
us the thumbs up, so I feel
I
like
like
that's
that
Okay.
idea.
Okay, cool. So
I can't wait to hear it.
yeah, tune in for our next episode, which will probably be Andrew and me talking about our work.
Oh,
So
I like
thanks
that
so
idea.
yeah. So thanks so
Mhm.
much, everyone. Take care, and we will connect next time. Thanks so much.
Take care.